Hey, John here from fatstacksblog.com. Today I want to talk about a recent duplicate content problem I encountered working with multiple writers. Fortunately, I found it in time fairly early on and my proposed solutions. So if you're using multiple writers for content for your blog or a new site, this could be a problem you could be facing. So the problem stated pertains to ordering up clusters. Now, an article cluster would be basically a series of articles that are all related that you're going to publish together, interlink on your site. I think it's a very, very good strategy for content for niche sites. It's worked really well for me. I have many clusters. Some will be a few articles. Some will be many articles, up to 50 plus articles. So I like the cluster approach. It works well. It makes keyword research easy. You just find a basic seed topic that fits with your niche and just crank out a whole bunch of topics, order them up, and get them published. Now, if you use one writer, this isn't going to be a problem. But if you use multiple writers, whether they work directly for you or are part of a writing service such as Writer Access or TextBroker, you may end up with duplicate content across your introductions in your articles and or your frequently asked questions. Now, I'm just going to clarify what I mean by an FAQ in an article. I incorporate and pepper in a lot of question-based headings and, in fact, whole FAQ sections in my content. I've been doing that for quite some time. It's a very effective type of content to add to almost any topic, really, and I like doing it because it really targets a lot of really long tail keywords. It's really good information for the site visitors, and it can be done on most topics that you put on your site. But there are some situations where it won't work, and I'm going to step you through that because it can result in duplicate content. So let's step through an entire example, and I'm going to use the topic basketball shoes. Basketball shoes could be a huge cluster. It could work on a niche site. You could be an affiliate. You can monetize with display ads. So let's say I've done my keyword research and I've come up with the following 6 articles. Article 1 is basketball shoes for jumping, right on down to Article 6, which is getting really long tail basketball shoes for short man over 40. Okay. Now, I don't know if these are good keywords or not. This is just an example. So I've got these 6 articles. It's going to be a cluster. I'm going to assign it out to, let's say I use a service like Writer Access, which I do use actually, and I send it out. So I'm going to end up with 6 different writers, very likely each doing one of the articles. So the problem that arises is the fact that if I'm going to include in my instructions that they write a nice introduction, and usually part of my introductions include, I like to incorporate some statistics about the industry or the topic itself. I find statistics and data interesting as an opener for articles or a personal anecdote. But if they're going to go the data or the statistics approach for the introduction, what can happen is that across all 6 articles, the writers are going to come up with the same information. So essentially, I'm going to have multiple similar introductions. So that's a problem. I want to avoid that. The bigger problem arises with the frequently asked questions. If all 6 writers use the various keyword research tools that I set them up with, and those being MarketMuse and Answer the Public, which offers some free search options every day, as well as the questions feature in Ahrefs. If they all use the seed word basketball shoes, what happens is they're all going to get essentially the same list of questions, right? And they don't know any better. They're following the instructions. But the problem is we're going to get the same FAQ. Now, this actually happened to me recently for a new cluster I ordered. So this is why I'm preparing this video, because it's a real problem. It can easily happen. And so what you need to do is you need to customize your instructions to writers that they're actually going to do the FAQ research based on the longer tail version of the keyword, and restrict the basketball shoes only to your cornerstone. So I set that out here. If you are going to have them do an FAQ query for getting a list of questions, you want them to use the entire phrase basketball shoes for wide feet as an example, okay? So then when I put that in there in MarketMuse, for example, now Answer the Public and Ahrefs would come up with different questions, and they may not come up with any questions, and that's part of the problem when you really go with the long tail looking for questions. It may be so obscure there aren't really any questions out there pertaining to the entire long tail phrase, right? But in this case, it actually worked out. So this is really cool. So what basketball shoes are good for wide feet? Well, that's an obvious one, right? What features make for a good basketball shoes for wide feet? And how do you stretch basketball shoes for your wide feet? Okay, these are actually questions that were generated by MarketMuse, so these are good. So this would work, but it's not always going to work. Okay, sometimes if you put in a long tail such as basketball shoes for short men over 40, the results aren't very good, right? What I ended up with in MarketMuse would be why low top basketball shoes are better. It's completely not really relevant at all. Now, it's relevant to the seed basketball shoes, which would be fine for the cornerstone, but it's not going to be good for our long tail article. Okay, so what are the solutions to deal with this? Well, there isn't really a cookie cutter solution, but here's how I deal with it. First off, on the cluster cornerstone, the big article is going to tie everything together. I'm going to instruct just use the keyword, the seed keyword, and come up with lots of FAQ. Now, in terms of basketball shoes alone, there's going to be a lot of questions that come up. Next, for the longer tail articles, the supporting articles, I would ask the writers to restrict the FAQ queries to the longer tail version. And what that's going to mean is I would include in those instructions, if there are on-point questions that arise, great, include them. If there aren't, then don't do it. Or if you're really on the ball, you can take the more general questions that arise, and if it's possible, sometimes it can be adjusted to work for the longer tail query. So here would be an example. Can a basketball shoe enhance performance is a common question based on the general query. But we could actually tweak that to work for wide feet. So you see that? So if writers are on the ball and they're thinking about this, they can actually do this. And it does work really well. But this is where you're going to want to hire pretty good writers to be able to come up with this sort of thing. Now, again, this isn't always going to work. So really, this is a custom solutions to a problem, and which means you really need to pay attention to what's going on, whether it's you or you have an editor that's managing all the content going on your site. You want to pay attention. And fortunately, I caught this with the first recent cluster that I put forth that had a lot of FAQ instructions in there for including in my articles. And I caught it about 4 or 5 articles in, and I realized, we've got a problem. And so I had to set about fixing that problem and preventing it going forward. Okay. Your final solution is sometimes, you know what, you're just not going to come up with good FAQ, and that's fine. You still have a fine article. You're just not going to have that. It's okay. There are a lot of articles I publish. I don't have an FAQ, and I only include it when it's a good fit. So if you're looking for more information about publishing niche websites and building an online publishing business, check out my free 6-figure baseline blogger. Just go to fatstacksblog.com. Check it out. It's at the top. You just sign up, get instant access to the course. Check it out. Thanks very much for watching.